So just a couple more seconds to allow you to have a look at this icebreaker question before we continue. All right, cool. All right, we have highest for digital nomad. Very interesting. All right, thank you so much for those of you who participated in the poll. Much appreciate that. So we'll move on. So today we're going to be joined by two lovely speakers, Carolina Pinart and Leila Delarive, who will share and discuss their journeys in the field of artificial intelligence. So after this, we will be entering a very interactive Q&A session where participants are going to have the opportunity to raise their hand and use both the mic and the video to communicate and discuss any questions that they have with their speakers. And of course, as we always do in our webinars, we have the option to use the chat and of course use the Q&A button. And both these buttons you'll find at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So please, at any point in time, if you come up with questions, I think we've got an early bird in here, which is very good. Thank you very much. If questions come through already. And so any more questions come through, I will be moderating that as well. And feel free to use the chat to just communicate with each other, share any insights. And yeah, so I'll monitor both of those. And if there's anything we've missed, that's my role, to just make sure we capture all of the useful information. And in terms of the raise your hand option, I'll explain that once we get to the Q&A session later on this evening. So we have two presenters today, and so two topics, roughly about 20 minutes each. And so we'll get started with our first presenter, Carolina Pinart. So Carolina Pinart is Nestlé's Global Product Director for New Generation Technologies, and also leads the use cases pillar of the group's AI strategy program. She joined Nestlé IT 3 years ago after 18 years of background in technology research, innovation, product management, and delivery in startups and corporates across several markets in Europe and America. She has a PhD in engineering and has also done business studies. So just before I hand over to you, Carolina, I just want to mention that I'll chime in when there's about 5 minutes left in your presentation, just to give you the opportunity to wrap up. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Carolina.
Hi, and thanks for the introduction. Let me just share my screen. Apparently, I cannot share my screen. Yeah, I get a...
Sorry, now it should work.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so let's see if it works now. Yes, right? Can you confirm there you see my screen, right? Okay, so first of all, I want to apologize for cheating because I'm not connecting from Switzerland. I usually commute a lot to Switzerland. I mean, before coronavirus, obviously, and I hope to be able to resume my frequent trips to Switzerland. I'm actually dialing from Barcelona, which is where Nestlé has its biggest global digital hub. I would say sunny Barcelona, but it's actually raining cats and dogs. So what I want to talk about today is, you know, Nestlé is a big company with a very clear challenge of becoming a cognitive company, a company that leverages artificial intelligence. And I want to, you know, give you a feel for what that means and what are the challenges in steps towards actually bringing artificial intelligence at scale. And so that you have an idea of what I mean by scale. We are the biggest company in the fast-moving consumer goods space. In our scale is really huge, right? We sell over 1 billion products every single day. We have 300,000 employees and operate in 187 markets, which is basically, you know, the whole world with a few exceptions. So when we're thinking of deploying artificial intelligence and leveraging data to be able to actually feed those models, we're talking about a planetary scale, right? So our vision is, as said by our group's chief information officer, is to become a cognitive enterprise, and that means that we have unbiased, and keep the word unbiased in your mind because we're going to be talking about ethics in a bit. Unbiased machine intelligence, and that will leverage that to automate, to respond, to, at the end of the day, make decisions to deliver value to our employees, our consumers, our customers, and society at large, whilst obviously ensuring that we provide returns because we are a business, right? So this is a major endeavor, especially if you think that we want to do that by 2025, which is 5 years from now, right? So to do that, as it usually happens in large corporations, we set up a strategic program. It was actually launched early last year in March to help Nestlé become this full data-driven and cognitive company in 5 years. And what we do is we're act as sort of like a compass for the company when it comes to artificial intelligence. And we define corporate directions in the main fields of action. So the company moves from, using data, we use data better in some places and worse in others, to becoming fully data driven and leveraging AI. And I probably said data already 15 times. I will not be talking about how we use data because the next presentation will, discuss the importance of data, but just know that there is no AI without good data, right? So this is something very, very important. So we act as this compass. And what are those fields of action, or pillars as we call them in the program? So there's 5 of them. There's the strategy, where do we want to get and why, and the ethics. Remember that I said, like, keep the word unbiased back of your mind. Bias is a major issue in ethics. Having an ethical code of conduct is actually the way to minimize, if not avoid, bias. So that's one piece. Use cases and roadmap, which is actually the pillar that I lead, refers to grouping the kinds of models that we want to do on the benefit, right? So a use case at the end of the day is I want to achieve certain thing, and this is how I'm going to structure it to get there, right? And the roadmap, how to get there. Where should we start? And you always want to start small and then grow from there, right? Because this is a very emerging space and a complex one. So we've got strategy and ethics, we've got use cases and roadmap. Now the next one is technology, right? So there is a plethora of different options when it comes to implementing artificial intelligence in vendors, like thousands of them. So we need to be very clear on what kind of technologies we recommend for each of the different use cases, and ultimately, even having some preferred vendors for different use cases. Then moving, down to the methodology and compliance. We are in a very, very regulated industry, as it should be, because people eat the food we produce, right? So regulation is paramount for us, and regulation requires having compliance. And AI is no different than any other technology. We'll have to follow compliance, right? And a methodology refers to how are we going to deploy all those AI technologies, right? And is there a better way of doing that, right? That we can sort of standardize across the board for Nestlé and get progressively better and better at actually deploying and running AI, right? Very, very important piece as well. And finally, because this is new, that's the education and communication piece. Actually, this was one of the first pillars, and what I'm doing today is also part of the education and communication piece of the pillar in spreading the word, both within Nestlé and outside of Nestlé, right? And we have an education program, and we have mapped out all the different employees and stakeholders into different personas and identified the needs that they have in terms of upskilling, from basic understanding of AI to also reskilling, because let's be honest, AI will automate a lot of jobs, especially on the more mundane tasks that we have, for example, in factories or supply chain or more admin tasks. So we're also building a program on reskilling those Nestlé employees that will have to change, right, because of the application of AI and communication, right, which is kind of the paramount to everything. This program lives on top of our existing data program. So we've got a program for years to make sure that we have master data that's very clear. Can you imagine the thousands of data sources that we have in making sure now more than ever that the data is good, is accessible, and it's reusable. So I want to talk about 3 challenges, right? Basically the top 3 challenges in ethics, challenges on the use cases and roadmap, and challenges on technology. Let's just give you a feel for what it is, right, in a big company. So I'll start with ethics, right? When we started working on ethics last year, we moved around, analyzed what was going on in Switzerland, what was going on in the European Union, in Asia, in the US, and in the sort of main markets, what's going on in Brazil in terms of ethics and government regulation of AI, right? And we gather all that information, and then we will look back on our values and say, like, we need to build standard that is as good as government standard, if not better. That's what we do, by the way, in other domains as well. And that is rooted in our values. Values of Nestlé is basically respect, right? Respect for ourselves, for others, for diversity, and for the future. And everything that we do needs to be rooted in those values. AI is no different, right? Now, the foundations to do that, to be able to be unbiased and respectful for us, is 6 different things. Transparency and explainability, I'll come back to that in a minute. Diversity, non-discrimination and fairness, privacy and security, environmental and social well-being, accountability, and technical robustness. Now, the last 5, those are very, very similar to the foundations that we have when it comes to any system that we put in production, right? There's a little bit more of non-discrimination and fairness in AI linked to transparency and explainability. So I'll just pause for a minute on that one. What I mean by transparency and explainability, it's something very difficult to do, actually, which is we need to be able to explain the rationale behind a decision that any AI that we put out there does, especially when it's making decisions on sensitive issues. I'll give you 2 examples. One that's not sensitive, like we're doing predictive maintenance for factories, right? To be able to repair something before it's broken, right? As you can imagine, when the production line is stopped because the machine starts underperforming, this is a major hurdle for us, right? That has a lot of consequences. So, but this is a no-brainer in terms of bias or ethics, because what we're doing is try to optimize a process for ourselves, right? But think of, for example, one chatbot that we launched to provide advice to expecting moms, right? And we'll launch that in South Asian markets. And it's providing advice and recommendations based on the questions that it gets. Now we start seeing some sensitive use case, right? And we worked very hard to make sure that we were able to trace back to why our AI embedded in the chatbot was recommending or providing advice depending on the topic, and making sure that that is something. And we work with the doctors and nurses and nutritionists and obviously our data scientists and partners in AI. And we tweaked the models, and we actually made them less automated than they might be, to be able to always trace back to that root cause and rationale for the decision. This is something that's very, very crucial for us and for everyone actually in AI, and it's a major challenge. let me then move to the use cases and roadmap. It's a different type of challenge, right? So there are a lot of things you can do with AI, right? So where do you start? In our case, what we're doing is we're looking at top use cases by measured as a sales increase, right? So we have grouped them in operations and consumer, and then we have the use cases for the factories, and we combine those with availability of technology and data and our own organizational readiness to deploy them. So that is sort of our guiding principles to create a roadmap. Top use cases in operations, forecast, demand, anything that's predicting out of stock, availability on shelf, assortment of stores, and of course, optimizing money for advertising and promotions. That it's in the bucket of sort of how we operate. And that, according to Boston Consulting Group, provides a sales increase of 7 to 9% in our industry. Consumers will run hyper personalization in engagement, in the pricing, promotions, in the recommendation that we provide. So all this third use case on the slide, diagnostic and recommendation service, that's the example that I provided on the chatbot for expecting moms, right? And obviously, we are using a lot of AI to predict what are the products that are going to be not only nutritious and yummy, but also favorite for our consumers, and be able to increase the chances of success and sales, right? This piece should bring us between 3 and 5% sales increase, right? And if you think 3 to 5% is small, this thing we are a 90 billion business. And finally, factories, super important, right? The number one by far use case in factories is machinery maintenance and quality. That's actually 29% of all AI implementations across manufacturing in all industries, not just food, but any industry with factories, is this maintenance and quality. That's combined with smart sensors. That's what you see the most. So my last piece on in terms of challenges is actually on the technology piece, and what kind of technologies and what kind of partners should we go with, right? There are many technologies that you can use in AI. The top or key technologies for Nestlé are the 6, right? So smart sensors, especially in the factories and our supply chain. So I think we have sensors in freezers that hold our frozen goods. So that is super important. They not only provide data to train the models and then to help them make better decisions, but they can also take some action. So some sensors that are also actuators. So this is a key space. We're also starting to apply smart sensors in other fields. For example, we do have a division on health science, right? And our R&D division does a lot of clinical trials to test on new products, especially for healthcare. And instead of having all patients in a clinical trial, typically you bring patients into one place, and you have a group that's actually testing that new product in a control group. Instead of doing that, we're trending towards more keeping them at home, equipping them with sensors, and then if you can also do that on the more on the well-being space with sort of like Fitbit bracelets and so on. So very, very important technology for us with this humongous amount of different options. Second one is virtual agents, and a chatbot that would be a great example of that, right? So ways to automate things, and we're doing those, implementing those in our consumer engagement a lot, because you can automate the first line of support up to about 80% with those. Natural language processing, huge as well, not only powering chatbots or voice application, but also to be able to get a lot of know-how from text. We have a lot of data that are actually in documents. In a lot of tasks, for example, you think regulation, operating 187 markets means that we have to adapt to 187 regulations. Well, it's a little bit less because some markets have the same. But instead of doing that manually and having people, we do have teams of people, obviously, that read the documents and and get us ready for regulation. But if we apply natural language processing, we can automate a big chunk of that work. So this is and also, you know, making sure that our labels are correct in terms of quality control and so on. So huge technology for us as well. Augmented reality, this has been, by the way, key during COVID-19 because of the travel ban. We have very expensive and complex machinery in the factories, and our engineers, just like anybody else, are not allowed to travel, right? So what we had to do, and it's actually that was deployed by my team, in new generation technologies, and we had to deploy within a couple of weeks you know, headsets and the technology for our factory floor workers to be able to do maintenance of the machines with an engineer, kind of a little bit like telemedicine, where you may have a surgeon in a location and then somebody else operating and somebody on a different one, and providing those instructions over augmented reality. If you're not familiar with that, it's basically you overlay objects onto the real world, so you can see like from in the case of machines, of factories, you would see like a digital twin of the machine, and then you know, open this door and unscrew a bolt or do whatever you have to do. So big technology for us as well. Image recognition, which by the way powers augmented reality as well, huge. We're doing a lot of things, you know, automating on-shelf availability is essentially based on image recognition. Usually how that works is you send a sales rep to each grocery store, a supermarket, and then they visually inspect the product placement for Nestlé, the price tags, replacements, and so on. Where do we see it with competitors? And then they jot it down and send it, right? Now you can do that, just one picture, and with the image recognition, you can do that work. So it's a huge time saving. And then we can also apply models to actually predict that, not only recognize and fix, which is kind of reactive behavior, but also predictive. And finally, this is a long-hanging fruit, this robotic process automation, which can be more or less intelligent. We're talking here about the one that's a little bit more intelligent. There's so you can imagine we have thousands of suppliers and processes and a lot of things that are really not integrated, and then we automate a lot of things from fulfillment forms for paying producers of raw materials and ingredients to anything else, right? So that is huge technology as well, because if you can automate and add intelligence to that, then we really, all this tedious work that I was mentioning, that in some cases you have fulfillment centers somewhere around the world where there are people punching things in and out, that can be largely automated. And that is key technology for us as well. And one last thing about technologies, and that's going to be my last one, is I'm just painted here like 6 different key technologies. But if you think of suppliers providing each of them, it's tens of thousands overall. So just imagine navigating the selection of partners, right? And map that with the use cases, because there are some sensors that are better for factories that have nothing to do with the sensors that you would use on a consumer use case. Like, for example, we have a pilot now with dogs to understand, you know, if they're exercising, because we have a pet care division as well. If they exercise, to be able to recommend the best diet and the best kind of course of action, like if your dog doesn't move enough, you know, there are some exercise and things you can do, and active play for the dog. And we also have networks of vets that can help you with that. So, and those sensors, which are basically in the dog collar, had nothing to do with the sensor that you would have in a robotic arm, right? And we're talking about a lot of vendors that we need to really understand how they operate, how they work with us, what is the value that they provide. It's very hard to measure actually the value that AI brings unless you test it out. And obviously we cannot test tens of thousands of vendors. So we're working very hard on actually coming up with a way to assess and select in a smart way, not only the technologies we use, but also the vendors and the partners that we select. So hopefully that was that kind of was good for you to kind of get a feel for for the kind of challenges that a big corporation has in AI, and that sparked your curiosity, and I'll get a lot of questions in the end.
Thanks, Carolina. Yeah, that was really mind-blowing, actually. No, it was really interesting. Yeah, I think definitely when it comes to privacy and ethics, it's really one of the biggest things that we need to think about when we're working with AI technology. I found it was really interesting. You talked about sensors and how they're used, but also even the image augmented reality in order to see how products are tracking on the shelves. I thought that was really, really creative, very innovative. I've obviously don't know very much about Nestle, except they make the greatest chocolate. But a really, really fascinating, innovative, creative, and just a whole breadth of expansion of how AI technologies are being used in Nestle. So thank you so much for that. You do have a couple more minutes left if you feel that there's anything more you'd like to emphasize before I move on.
I don't know. Okay.
Up to you.
I'm always, calling for interested people in AI actually to join our ranks. We're looking for people that are passionate in the topic to come join the revolution, right? It's probably an unusual place. Actually, I never thought I would work for Nestle. I worked in technology my whole life. And I only thought of Nestle because I grabbed the Kit Kat in a booth at 4 years from now, a few years ago. And then I learned about all this technology. It's logical that a big company will have a huge tech as well, even if it's an industry that's a non-tech industry. But it never occurred to me to work on Nestle. So I'm thinking maybe, in these times of lockdown that we're all thinking about so many things, thinking of eventually, we have offices in Switzerland, people. So, and we're always looking for talent.
All right, thank you very much for pointing that out. I hope everyone heard that. That's really exciting to know. Great. All right, so what we might do now is move on to our second presenter's topic for today. So that is Leila Delarive. So Leila Delarive is a lawyer. She's an entrepreneur. She's passionate about new technologies as a means to empower citizens. She's the CEO of Amplify, a smart and automated ad buying platform to leverage public visibility. And she's the founder and chairwoman of the Empowerment Foundation, advocating for human-centered technology. Wow. So just before I hand over to you, Leila, I just want to mention that I'll chime in when there's about 5 minutes left in your presentation, just to give you an opportunity to wrap up. But yeah, I'll hand over to you, Leila. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka. So, good evening, everyone. Why don't we just start with a question, just to maybe better know each other. So how much are you familiar with artificial intelligence? Are you not familiar at all? You've heard and read a little bit about it. You took a class, because there are many classes that we can take nowadays, or you're an expert. So please vote, and we can see who we are in this room. So I don't know if you're done. Okay, so can we see the, okay, so everybody knows roughly a little bit about it. So perfect. Let's start. I'm gonna really talk tonight about, let me share my screen with you and start. Okay, this is the presentation. I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence for the rest of us. As you've just heard, I'm really into about empowering citizens and giving them access to new technologies that I believe will dramatically change the way we live in the 10 or so coming years. So, I would say that, first of all, before we go deep into the topic, There's a recent study by Gartner that shows that those past 4 years, the increase in adoption of artificial intelligence is about 270%. But still, 63% of organizations haven't deployed this technology. So, I mean, it's a lot, we talk about a lot about artificial intelligence, and especially I would say from 2 or 3 years ago in the general public, not for the data scientists or the experts, but I would say we hear a lot about it. And today it's like, are we gonna miss something if we're not going into this AI era? Are we already too late, or is it not too late and maybe too early? So that's the question that we need to ask ourselves. First of all, before you decide to go for an AI strategy, have you assessed your own business? What is really valuable for your business today? What are the tasks that are really important? Is it like taking care of your customers, increasing the different functionalities of your product? How much can be automated in your business? That's really one first step to start with, is to assess your business and where you want to go to. Once you have made this, little assessment about your existing products, services, and processes, then ask yourself how much data is needed to achieve this AI strategy. We'll go back to this later on. And of course, when you want to go for an AI strategy, can you do it in-house, internally, or do you need to do it with consultants? Do you need to work with a team of AI experts, data scientist experts? These are also questions that we're going to come to a little bit later on. First of all, I think what is really important is to map your vision. I'm going to come to our Amplify AI vision a little bit later on, so that I'll explain you how we did it. But to map your AI vision, again, have in mind where you want to go in the coming years and how you want to make your business evolve. So, what are you looking at? Do you want to get more revenues? Do you want to have less costs? Or do you want to create new services or products to win over the competition? I think that are the three main questions that any business owner is asking itself. And can AI really help you to achieve those goals? So when we come to the developing in-house or with an external AI team, I would say that you really need to ask yourself, are you a traditional business going digital? I'm talking about small and medium companies. I'm not talking about Nestlé, of course. But are you a shop who has e-commerce, who sells online? Are you a traditional business like a restaurant or a hotel and you have some already digital services? Or are you a digital company, which is completely different? You're a platform and you already have the capacity to test very quick new solutions, new websites. You're maybe more agile because everything is digitally based, and therefore, but you're still not an AI company. Or are you an AI company? An AI company means that you have already used artificial intelligence in your daily business. You have a strong data strategy. You have already acquired data, and you focused on automation. So based on your profile, how can you do? Can you develop it in-house or with an external AI team? I would say that maybe before really trying to know what is the profile of your business, you should rather ask yourself, do I really need to build an AI system myself, or can I simply outsource my project? Because, I mean, doing it in-house requires a lot of investment, really skilled teams, and I think it's quite risky to start doing it yourself if you don't really know what is the purpose of building your AI system. So can you simply outsource your project? There are more and more now today experts specialized into artificial intelligence that could develop that for you. Look also about your on your industry standards, because there are already existing solutions. Google, I mean, all those big players, they have open algorithms that you can start to use and train. So if your business has very specific needs, and that's why you need to make this assessment on your personal needs on your business, you can start building your own AI system. But if you have already industry standards, so don't waste your time trying to create a system that is already industrialized, because you will really gain money and time by doing it with an existing system. So maybe it's really also at this stage, you need to discuss with a good team of experts, putting everybody together, people coming from the AI world, people coming from the business world, and having a cross discussion. Because you will see that we have really, really different point of views when we discuss all together, and it's super interesting because it makes, you know, the project evolve. When I discuss with our dev team and data scientists and AI team, I mean, we're a small team, but nevertheless, when we discuss all together, then the vision becomes clearer and clearer. And so let me give you the example with Amplify, my business. So as we said, Amplify is a smart and automated ad buying platform. So what we want to achieve is like really simplify completely the process of buying ads online. Whether you want to promote your business, you want to make a public statement, whatever you want to do, I mean, you need to reach your target audience. And that's where really the tricky part is, how to reach this audience. So first step, we have completely simplified the process. Today, you can just launch your ads online within a few minutes. But then, how to make those ads efficient? And that's where artificial intelligence would come into the game. So behind the simplicity, there will be a whole data strategy. First of all, you see here that our user that we call Amy, she's the owner of a coffee shop in Geneva. So she will create her account, and based on that, we are going to do a business profiling, because Amy as a coffee shop obviously will not target the same persons as John, who is a hairdresser, as Angela, who is a consultant. We all need to talk to the right people that we want to do business with. So not only we are going to get Amy's data, but we are going to make a business profile based on all the external data sources that we're going to use. And based on that, we will know exactly who Amy is and what are her needs. Second step, we will help her to promote the right ad, the right message. Therefore, we are creating an assistant, a smart assistant that will help Amy to take the right marketing actions, talk the right language, make the right ad, so that her message is really heard by her target audience. Based on clustering and machine learning, we will be able to really target in a very efficient way Amy's target audience. Then, a third step, budget and ads are approved, and we are launching the ads throughout all the social media networks, so that she has a single point of entry, and she doesn't take care of the rest. We take the hard decisions for her. Where to distribute her content, how much money she will need to spend. We will make a recommendation and also predict the success of her ad campaign. Again, these are a lot of data that we have to gather, as I said. And this is really the tricky point of any AI project, is really how to have good data. So at the end of a campaign, based on all the journey of Amy and her ad, we'll be able to give her insights so that she can optimize, and the machine will optimize her next campaigns. So as you can see, we want our AI vision is to completely not only simplify, but optimize the whole process of getting online and be visible throughout ad buying. Now, tricky point again, data. I think it's really the most crucial, and Carolina, who's a data specialist scientist, will probably give you a better view on that. But we have, everybody does produce data. From the small business to the huge businesses, everybody produces data. And the problem with all the data that we produce is that there are some good and some not relevant data. So it's not because we're small, it's not because we're a startup or because we are even one entrepreneur that we shouldn't take care of our data strategy. And this is really something that is important. So it's not necessarily that complicated to have this good data strategy. But the thing that is really important, because data are everywhere, they're on your social media, on surveys, on forms that you can send to your customers. I mean, there are data absolutely everywhere in your business. As long as you start marketing and interact with people, your own data are here into your business. So again, it's really important to, with this data strategy, to try to clean the data that are relevant from the ones who are not relevant. And for that, I mean, there are tools that help to do it. I'm not making any advertising for anyone because I'm not related, but I found this Oracle slide that I found very interesting, is how to prepare your company, you know, to consolidate all the data and to extract value. And as you can see, 66% of the data that are used to, you know, help to grow the volume of data. So it's the next step. It prepares you to the next step. And you see here, I mean, organization now work with more sources than ever. So really pay attention. I'm not saying that we need to do exactly this, but pay attention on the way you will put all your data together. So first, what are the data sources available? What is the quality of data? So be careful of the messy and not accurate data. And do you have enough data? That's the third question. In our case, I mean, we need extra external data sources. In-house, we don't have enough data at this stage. And how are you collecting the data? Can you optimize the way to collect it in real time? So this is already a step that you have to work with maybe some specialists. I just want to give like a very easy and down-to-earth example. A restaurant or a hotel. First of all, they need to know who are the customers. Where they're coming from, what are their families, are they singles, what age they are, and this is already important information that we need to gather. And then imagine you have a restaurant in your hotel. So what are people mostly ordering? Salads or maybe fondue during winter time. Why is it important to gather the data? Because when you want to market later on, you know exactly who, I mean, what people like to consume. But more than that, you will be able to predict based on the previous years, maybe how to optimize, buy less of this product, more of this one, because people will order more of that. So you can have more efficiency in the way you will run your business. How often do they come back? How can you make them come back more often? Again, these are a lot of data sets that you can gather just to analyze your own very simple small business. And if you want to be cost effective, as I said, you need to really see how you structure your costs. So you see, with a simple example, we already have tons of data that we can gather on our daily business. For Amplify, the power behind the simplicity, I come back with Amy It's business type, location, and time context. It's very important, as I said, because we really need to know exactly how Amy is behaving so that we can help her into her business with our own internal knowledge graph and the external data sources to really help her enhance her marketing and have a highly targeted audience. But it starts with this simple point of entry: who is Amy and how is she behaving? Now, as Carolina said, we need a lot of data. But do we really need big data to develop artificial intelligence? It really depends on what you want to do. If you want to have an automated chatbot, or you can interact with your audience, people that are asking questions, people that are maybe, you know, want to book something, then maybe you need to have good data, but you don't need to have tons and tons and tons of data. Now, when we talk about big data, the classical example is, you know, this when it's used in medicine, when you want to compare the different pictures of radiologists, and so that you can help the machine to learn and to make the right, I forgot the word, to put the right, to help the machine diagnose the right disease. So to train the machine, you will need tons and tons of pictures. To identify one problem, they already need to have like thousands of pictures. So big data is really necessary depending on the type of project that you want to develop. But if you want just to develop a chatbot, you don't need to have like millions of data. An example to start with, because if you want to go very big from the very beginning of a project, there's a high chance that you will stop and you will fail and you will lose a lot of money. So if you want to go for an AI project, start with a proof of concept. You need to test your concept. Based on the vision that you have, you will need to test. Try, iterate, fail, iterate, fail. Invest a fair amount of money, because, I mean, to start with even a POC, you need to invest money. And if you want to work with consultants, it's not like 1,000 francs. It will cost some money to invest. So make sure that you're ready to invest. And if you do it, at least you will learn a lot for the next steps. Training your data is also essential. And then once you have the result that you have in mind, is it satisfactory, or you're far from the result that you had in mind? So you will need to start again over and over and over again. It's a long process. Therefore, I would say that we talk a lot about AI. Today, we're far from really implementing in our daily business, because again, it's a long process. And Nestlé, Carolina said, it's by 2025. So today when we hear a lot of startups or companies saying, we have a machine learning system that helps us to do blah, 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 and blah, 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 I think that there's a lot of buzzwords, but the reality is that if you assess all those AI pretended systems, not a lot of companies really have what we really call an efficient AI system. So what I would say, and this is really something that I could give as an advice, is really to, if you want to be AI ready, before going for AI, have a good understanding of how AI functions. And again, there are lots of available resources. You can go and follow classes online and read a lot. I mean, there's a lot of resources on how it functions. Then really ask yourself why you're doing it. It's not because it's trendy or it's hype. I mean, there should be a real purpose behind it. And if today it's too early, we're sure that in a few years there will be available solutions for every business, because I mean the big ones are developing those solutions that will be available for all of us. The team is essential. Again, the team needs to understand why you want to do that, the potential of AI, and you all need to talk together not make silos, but everybody needs to have this discussion all together. And it's not only the tech team, the business team need really to be involved into those decisions to be taken. Data strategy, take care of your data. It's your most valuable asset, and maybe a company can be even bought because they have a huge and amazing data strategy. So I think it's really the heart today of any business. Even if you want to go digital, of your beginning of your digital journey, that's really the key point. Check and assess the market. Don't go into difficult developments. Industry standards do exist, and try to see if you can implement them, and start small with your POC, and then maybe you will see the good results coming. But I will finish with that note. On that note, I think that, you know, a few years ago, today we're all crying because we've lost our data privacy, and because we are completely dependent on the big players, the big platforms. So if there's one thing to really do today, is really to really see what are the opportunities. If you understand the need, I mean, the way the tech functions, you will necessarily need to understand the output and how you can make the best use of this evolving technology. So be curious and really try to make the best use of the coming technology, evolving technology. Thank you.
Thanks, Leila. That was really, really interesting, very insightful. And I think what really struck me was, like you mentioned, a lot of companies these days think that they have to just, you know, casually mention it in passing. Oh, I'm using such and such machine learning and AI because it's the new sexy term to use and it just makes my business look cool. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But as you mentioned, it's about knowing what you want to do with the data, what business value, what business outcome you're trying to achieve. Because if it can be achieved with something less complex, then, you know, that would be the right place to start. And yeah, like definitely the other takeaway, I guess, is as people, we need to remember we're kind of in a state of, what was the term? I was reading a report the other day, data deluge. There is so much data available. It's not about how big your data is. It's about how valuable it is. And something Erin has mentioned in the chat box, and I absolutely agree, it's the quality of your data and the amount of time that goes through to process that data. It's immense, because at the end of the day, if you don't have good quality data, you'll have machine learning algorithms that produce biased outcomes. And then that will definitely have a huge impact on profits and losses for your company. So absolutely agree.
Priyanka, I don't know if you agree, but this is, as you said, so crucial that maybe bringing someone, an expert that could help with this data strategy is essential. I would say if someone needs to invest money, I would invest into that, and to really have, and that's how you're going to be AI ready when it's time to be ready.
Absolutely.
So there are a lot of specialists and companies offering this service. So I think that's really, because, I mean, you know, it's really messy. When you start, you have all your files everywhere, and you know, nobody thinks one day it's going to be that valuable.
Yeah.
So I think it's really, maybe for me, the key point is this one. And as a data scientist, I think you can agree on that.
Oh, definitely. I think that's really important. And actually that reminded me of something Carolina mentioned in her talk earlier. It's about collaboration. We need to bring business analysts. We need to bring people from different backgrounds together with data scientists and data analysts to work together. Because there's no point in producing a beautiful and sexy piece of AI technology that nobody understands. There's just, we're not really then making maximum use of our technology until we fully understand what it's supposed to achieve. And we can only really assess and evaluate if it's doing what we expect it to do if we have a data strategy in place. That clearly explains the connections between our business, profits, losses, and the data that we're using for producing that. So, absolutely. All right, thank you, Leila. That was brilliant. So Carolina, if you're okay to switch your mic on as well.
Sure.
So we have a lot of questions that have come through. Wow. Some questions have come through in the chat. So what I've done is I've put them in a file so that I can switch between them as well. And so we are now moving into our Q&A session for this evening. So very shortly, attendees, you will notice that there is a raise your hand button appearing on the bottom of your Zoom screen. So hopefully all of you see that. I'm not an attendee, so I can't see it, but I'm assuming everyone can. Yep, okay, great. I'm seeing 2 participants have raised their hand. So we're gonna keep this pretty interactive. So just to let you know, with the raise your hand functionality, basically, once, you know, I'm going to, or Rafaela will choose a particular person who's raised their hand to ask a question. This means that your mic and your camera will be switched on. So if you're not comfortable with any of that, please do let us know before we do it. And of course, you can totally just use the Q&A box as well, because I mean, we're all sitting in different environments right now. All right, so what I might do first is we'll start off with the questions that are in the Q&A box. And I also just want to take a moment again, just to remind everybody that this session is being recorded. And as much as we would love for everybody to be interactive, we do want to give everyone an equal chance to discuss components. So if we just want to try and keep our questions and answers a little bit more focused, a bit brief, that would be truly, truly appreciated, just so we can keep our time track. Okay. And apologies, I may be a little bit slow with the raise your hand because it's my first time using it. So, so let's start with the Q&A, the first Q&A that came off as soon as we began the webinar, and then I'll move into one from the raise your hand option. So the first question is, which is the basic profile to start learning and using AI? And this can be answered by either Carolina or Leila or both, so.
I mean, I would say anyone with interest and passion can become an expert. I have people in my team. I have, for example, one person who's now an expert in chatbots, and she's a journalist by training. And she started being really passionate about, you know, the way we create connections in conversations, and that led her to kind of more around learning about data and conversations, and from data to natural language processing. You might think like, wow, but this is, you know, opposite of the end of the spectrum. I think not anymore. We're kind of going back to Renaissance in this aspect. The AI is about a lot of things. And when you think in that specific example, natural language processing, there's the word language there and natural. So people, you know, coming from any background and you're passionate, I say go for it.
I would add, you know, because I started, you know, being interested by AI because I heard this word 2017. Everybody was talking about it. You know, it's like AI, and I was like, what is this? You know, what is this notion? AI, artificial intelligence. So let's go in deep dive. And I really understood when I started understanding what AI is all about, that it will really reshape our world. And as you said, Carolina, the main challenges are really ethical, legal challenges. So anyone, it's not just to be a tech expert. I'm a lawyer by training. I mean, really everybody needs to take part of this conversation and to become an AI expert. As I said, again, we do that with small kids, with the foundation. We go in schools and we help kids to, you know, it's like a fake trial, and they have to plead against each other, and one is for AI and the other one is against AI. So that we give them also a full vision on you know, not biased one, but a full vision on how AI is functioning. And I think that it should start from school now, because it's too important on the way it will impact our daily lives. And I think that it's not just business, it's really our daily lives that is also influenced by artificial intelligence.
Okay, thank you, ladies. So we're going to switch to the raise your hand functionality now. So we have here a few people who have asked who would like to interact more interactively. So we have Kamini Garg. So I'm going to just activate Kamini for you to allow to talk right now. And please feel free to address your question to Carolina or Leila if it's a specific one, or to them both. Thanks, Kamini. Handing it over to you now.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So thank you very much, first of all, for the talks, Carolina and Leila. It was really great. So just to give you a brief intro, I'm a lead data scientist and I'm working here in Zurich in UPC, Switzerland. And I have actually questions for both of you. So let me just start with the question for Carolina. So I heard that, that when you were talking that there is in the consumer division, you also have a recommendation via the chatbot. So my question is that for chatbot, it's very important to do the right intent analysis. And specifically, since you are situated in 187 markets across the world, they might have a different intent recognition for the different languages. So how do you handle it? Is it like locally developed, or is it all developed in Barcelona or in Switzerland? Because it's very complex, along with the ethical or maintaining the compliance of the different countries.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Thank you. Yeah, with language, it's not only about ethics, it's also about culture. And so the way we approach it is we usually group our markets in regions. This is from an admin perspective, but also in sort of cultural similarity areas, right? So when we developed a chatbot, now we know, for example, that if we developed a chatbot, and it's not just language, it's more culture, because language you can translate, but culture, that's more difficult. And we start a chatbot, say, for a market, and we know it has like an area of similarity around it, then we can use, we use, by the way, conversations from the help desk or from phone calls or emails. So real conversations to be able to tweak the recognition for the intents. And then once we had that chatbot running in that market, then we transcode it onto another market. And then we work with those, like the same types of conversations from the help desk of the other market to see the difference. We work also with people from the market. So the development bit is not as important where it's located, is more we work a lot with people from the market. And then with in those teams, we're also incorporating from partner companies, specialists in language and in communication to really train the models for the nuances, right? Because if you think, for example, US, UK, oh, it's English. No, right? It is English, yes, but used in different ways. And when you say something in British English, it might be something different in American English, right? So I think that's what's beautiful about AI. That, to Leila's point, is the combination of data scientists and the data engineers, because there's a lot of cleaning. Believe me, you get all those files from the help desk. 80% of the work is actually making sense of what you're getting. So a lot of data engineering, data scientists, linguists, also communication, marketing, and people from the help desk. We work with the teams because there's something that data will never be able to tell you, which is the story behind the data. So we test the chatbots as well with our agents in the help desk, because they know kind of things that are not in the data. So that's how we do it. There's a lot of work at the beginning, and it becomes less and less as we transcode to next markets, but always in these areas of cultural similarity.
Okay, thank you. I think until unless it's about it's text-based, it's easier. But as soon as we move to, in future, especially in AI, to the speech-based systems, then I think the language becomes more contextual. Because, for example, Swiss German is completely different than the normal German which we speak. So you need to understand, I think. Thanks a lot. And then Leila, I have a second question. I have a question for you about the discount. So you explain that you get a kind of, from company says, I'm a coffee shop, you get the profile of the company, then you target the customers. Then you, in the ad, I saw that there was something like that you get this much percentage of discount. So my question to you, how do you define, or how do you find the right discounts? Because I assume this is just to get the better return on marketing.
Not really discount. You will get insights from once you have finished your campaign. Because if you need to gather all this info personally when you launch a campaign online, it's hard to really understand what happened. You know, it's a bit of this like a black box. Even when you boost on Facebook or wherever you want to boost your content, it's really difficult to really understand. So maybe it was insights, not discount. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But the idea is really to help people also understand what happened, because most of the time you just don't understand. So those insights that we give is really, so based on what we've learned, we'll help them to improve then for the next campaigns, the different metrics.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Kamini. All right, so what we'll do is we'll move on to we have quite a few people who've actually done the raise your hand. So I think let's roll with that first, then we'll move into Q&A. So because we have quite a few in the raise your hand, can I just request the participants to ask one question only? That's just so we can allow enough time for everybody to have a chance to ask something. Thank you so much. So now we're going to move on to Brendan. So Brendan, if it's okay with you, I'm just going to switch your mic on. So please go ahead, Brendan. Here we go.
How's that?
Hi, Brendan. Yep,
Hi.
you're audible. Go for it.
Oh, great. Thanks very much. Thanks, Carolina and Leila, for a really fascinating presentation. I'm from Basel, and I'm an entrepreneur in the healthcare area, and I started up an AI team. I just put one together recently to apply in advertising, but also in marketing data. Absolutely fascinating area. But the question I've got is really for Caroline, because what I saw from your presentation, Caroline, is a number of use cases. Some of those use cases, for example, visual recognition, that's an obvious use case for artificial intelligence. But other ones, for example, machine and production failure management. Here, I'm wondering if AI would be a better choice than traditional predictive algorithms. So I guess my question to you is, out of those use cases, are you assessing traditional methodology for data analysis and prediction versus AI, one of which is perfectly predictable and perfectly auditable? AI, not always so. As you mentioned yourself in the chat bot, you had to reduce the amount of AI complexity. So I'm just interested if you can comment on that, because I found also a little bit of a choice needs to be made when I'm talking with different user cases.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, and exactly the example that you provided is one that in some instances we've decided not to proceed with AI, because when we analyze, when we test out AI in a use case, we have a baseline, right? We started, what are we doing today? Like, for example, I put the example of on-shelf availability. We're sending a man in a van, right, to take pictures and write notes, right? And we measure that in terms of effectiveness, very, very effective, but very inefficient, right, in terms of cost. And then when we use AI instead, we compare, and then we make a decision. In terms of predictive, sometimes the systems that we already have in place that use AI are really, really good. So the cost of deploying AI, not just deploying AI, but to just think that all the data that we need needs to be first findable, then accessible, and then interoperable, because we have different data sources, especially in factories where you have machines of maybe 15 different vendors. Sometimes the cost of putting AI in that use case is not worth it, because the method, the system that we have right now is really good, or in terms of cost benefit better. So you're absolutely spot on. There's a cost benefit analysis, just like everything, anything in life. So AI is no different, right? It's a cost benefit, and we're very cautious of not doing AI for the sake of AI, but when it really, really brings the value, and it has a cost of deploying, for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brendan. All right, so we will move on to, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this name appropriately, so my apologies. But the next person is Samudiata. So just give me a second there. All right. So Samidyata, I'm just going to switch the mic on for you to allow you to talk.
Hey, Priyanka.
Hi. Hello. Yep, you're audible. Please go for it.
Yeah, you can call me Sam. That
Sam,
works well.
okay.
So, Carolina and Leila, thank you for the wonderful presentation. So, I had 3 questions, but in the interest of time, I'm going to ask the one that is most pertinent to me. I have been a digital transformation expert for the last 12 years. So, as a woman in technology and digital, I'm thinking hard about making a shift from digital consulting to consulting with with AI, digital AI or digital aspects of AI. And most of the roles that I see, which is out there, or it could even be, professional courses, they are all open to data scientists and particularly technology roles where people are coding. How does somebody start looking at the business aspects of AI? What do you think is the scope for a career in a role like that? How does one make the switch? Too many questions.
Maybe I can give a start to answer, and then maybe Carolina. But I know that today there are like many not only online classes, but schools are starting, like IMD or all those big schools or EPFL. They have a joint program that is called Transform Tech, and they really start to emphasize on how business can benefit from this tech transformation. Therefore, I think there are crash courses. It's 1 week you can attend, but what is really important is really to have in mind that we should democratize access to this technology. So if as a consultant, you can really understand the needs of the business, and not only the big players, but also the small ones, because if you look about on the data and economy, the economy is also made of micro and small enterprises. Therefore, I think there's a need to really focus also on those small ones, because the big ones, they have Carolina, they have a lot of experts, but maybe the small ones, they don't have affordable solutions. So one way will be really to accompany the smaller structures. I don't know if Carolina, you want to add something on that?
I think if you mentioned that you're an expert in digital transformation, AI is part of digital transformation. So I think you have a lot of know-how already, even if you don't realize that, because it's a lot about also organizational readiness. Do you, as an organization, big or small, have the data? Do you have an idea of how you're going to spend your budget to make the transition? So those are things that when you're doing digital transformation, you understand, right? So what I would do to make a switch is what I did. Actually, I wasn't an expert. I don't consider myself an expert these days, because this is so much to know. But into selecting an area, like you start by doing one of the courses of AI for everyone to understand, the different pillars of AI, and then find your niche, right? It might be that you start helping on the organizational readiness or in the data strategy, and then find your way. You don't have to learn the math behind the models or how to do machine learning operations. No, those are pieces, and that's a complex thing to learn. That takes actually years, but there are so many things to do in AI that just find where you have transferable skills, because I'm sure you have many.
Thank you. That's super helpful.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for your questions there. All right, so with that, moving on to our next person. So our next attendee would like to ask a question. Their name is Galia, and apologies again if I'm not pronouncing the name right. So Galia, I'm going to just turn the mic on for you to ask a question. Just checking. Yep. Hello, Galia. Can you hear us?
Hi. everybody. Thanks a lot for the great seminar and the great presentations. I have a question which is related to some ethical aspects, and namely AI and unemployment, because the people are a little bit intimidated. And I would like to ask you, how do you experience this in your everyday business? Thank you.
Maybe I can start answering this one. In my experience, people are generally concerned about three things when it comes to AI: algorithmic bias, inexplicable decision making, and loss of jobs, because AI will automate some jobs, right? And there's a lot of studies, you can actually Google them. Most of them, what they say is that 2 or 3 years from now, about 10% of workers are very, very likely to be displaced from automation. Think of, for example, in the case of Nestlé, any machine operators or people that do the filling for the machines as we automate, and that has happened since the beginning of time, right? You know, because carriage drivers no longer exist because cars came in, right? And also autonomous vehicles are going to put a lot of taxi drivers out of business, right? But in this circle of renovation and innovation, there's always been new jobs that pop up, right? So yes, you know, if the people, of course, they have all the right to be concerned about job loss, but it's also the time to start looking into the opportunities that that AI will bring. If AI frees up part of your work, how can you grow? And if you're doing a job that's very, very repetitive and therefore highly automatable, AI or not AI, it can be automated, then start looking into how you can reinvent yourself. And we do have a Nestlé map that out into like the different functions, different types of work to be able to provide that opportunity for reskilling.
Reskilling, and also I think that there might be new jobs that are gonna exist. Maybe we don't know what those jobs are going to be, but there are lots of opportunities, and I think that AI will probably make our life easier. Those repetitive tasks, as you said, Carolina, maybe we will not need to take care of them, and I truly believe, deeply believe, that we will become more and more humans, thanks to the machine and thanks to the robots that are going to take all the tasks that we don't want to do, or that are a burden, and that we can really start being more human and more empathetic, and, you know, interacting in a more authentic way with our peers.
All right, thank you so much. So we'll move on to Sandra. So Sandra, I'm just going to switch the mic on for you. So Sandra, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, thank you very much for this meetup organization and the two presentations. I am a computer engineer here in Geneva. I have one question. We talk about AI, intelligence artificielle, but what about its algorithm? It's written by people, and how can we make? I'm sorry, I'm not so very used to speak English in public. How can we be sure that the algorithms are fair, are ethical? Mm-hmm. Because I read a few months ago that programs made by male developers were biased, and they present this kind of software for presented things, but according to the male meaning, way of thinking, and not of the women. So how can we have something fair, and we can trust a decision made by AI, because it's something, it's a code, an algorithm. Also, this algorithm, this code is fed by data, a huge amount of data on a very high speed. It's still something written by people. So my main concern is to have something that we can trust, and especially ethical, not to move people, to make people do things that they didn't do, they wouldn't do if they have to think by themselves and not by following the instruction of the suggestion made by the machine.
If you ask the lawyer, I would really say we need regulation. I'm not a fan, I'm more liberal, you know, I'm not really a fan of having too much regulation, and especially when it comes to tech, because we're in the phase of letting tech being developed. But I think that really to avoid this question of bias and also unfair treatment, because we already know that, you know, gender bias, racial bias are really a key issue, especially like in the US, and we really need to have guidelines, if not guidelines, soft law, if not soft law, then, but unfortunately the legislator is always 10 years behind what, you know, what they need to do. But if we had legislators that really understood the tech ecosystem and that could really take measures to, you know, accompany these tech developments, it would be helpful. If not, then it's the liability, the social responsibility of companies to make sure to incite their own teams to avoid those bias. Maybe it's too idealistic, because we know that Google or those big tech companies, they are using algorithms to really bring the users to a certain behavior, or, you know. So therefore, I think this is a huge debate, huge challenge. And we need to sit at the table, business owners, companies, and also legal world to work together. Again, it's like we need to address those AI questions. We need to address those algorithms and those questions in a trans competence among different stakeholders, and not only the tech world. We really need to have the business and the legal world being involved into those discussions.
I would add that in practical terms, I think bias comes in different, you know, 4 main flavors, right? First, bias can be, of course, it can be introduced by people. Probably I'll start with that one. And besides regulation, which will force actually companies to do things well because they're going to be accountable for them, it's about diversity. But not only in AI. I mean, see what's happening in the US these days, right? And in other places. Having a diverse team, both in background and also in the, you know, in gender and in race, is how we're gonna ensure that we kind of reduce bias, not avoid it, because we all have unconscious bias. I mean, even with the best intentions, we introduce bias. That's where you know, other angles come in, right? There are also mathematical ways of making sure that, you know, that the data set that we're using for the models is complete, right? Because you know, you get some data into your model. If it's garbage, you get garbage out. Even if you have the most diverse team in the world. So making sure that the data that you're getting is the right one, that when you select which one you keep, that, you know, has been done thoroughly, and then that at the end, there's some way to actually understand if the model is doing what it should do, the way it should be doing that, right? On that sort of more explainability and transparency. I think the combination of this 4 is what will, you know, at least enforce a policing system for bias. But the diversity piece, in our case, is the one that we find the most difficult, because it's also an availability issue. We don't have enough people with the skills to form a diverse team, right? So and that's why I think this education piece is so important. Bring more people in, more women, and more people with different credos in different walks of life, and create these truly diverse teams. Otherwise, models will behave just like the people who train them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Both of a technical and legal approach or views. Thanks.
Thank you. And I guess, you know, just quickly, one thing I don't want to add to that as well is biasness, at least from what I'm understanding, working in this field and studying in this field, is it comes when the data that you're testing your model on, or you're training your model is basically learning the environment, learning the data, the concepts. If it's not representative of what's actually happening out there, that adds another level of biasness. And that's something we absolutely need to be very aware of. And this is, as both Carolina and Leila, you mentioned, feeds into your data strategy. You need to have something in there. How are you going to make sure that you measure and keep bias low? Especially with the world we live in now, where data is coming in faster within milliseconds. You test a model on historical data and then you try and deploy it, and suddenly it's not useful anymore because it's not relevant to what's happening in the real world. So absolutely something to add in the data strategy. And like you mentioned, this is why we need people from all different walks of life to give their insight and views and reflect and help us together to decide whether the outcomes that are being produced by AI is reliable or not. All right, I'll stop there for myself because I know there are quite a few other people waiting. So moving on to Vilma. So Vilma, I'm just going to allow the talk now. So if you want to just go ahead and unmute your mic and you can ask your question. Sorry. Vilma?
Yes, can
Great.
you hear me?
Yes, great. Go for it.
Thank you very much, ladies. It was very interesting because I'm in AI for, I don't know, the last probably 10 years. Before, we didn't even know what that AI is. But actually, now I understand that AI, that's what we try to build. So I'm in healthcare, okay? And we were trying only one thing to reduce, like patient talking to doctor, right? Because if you are going to doctor all the time is looking at the laptop and just typing, doing something, you know, preparing like prescriptions and stuff like that. So we put the artificial intelligence in the background of that healthcare technologies, and actually it helped a lot for a provider to save the time instead of typing, mistyping, doing a lot of different kind of bad things. But like you said, you need to have that very line between what is like artificial intelligence can do, and especially in healthcare, right? And what like a doctor needs to be done, like after, for example, medical review or something. So this is like just suggestion for the provider, what he needs to, like at the end, he needs to review and let's say click the confirm and send everything what needs to be sent, or whatever, sent to insurance company, laboratories, prescriptions, and so on and so on. I would like to hear from you, ladies, how much you were like working in healthcare to put that artificial intelligence in clinics, hospitals, and so on, ambulatories. Did you ever have that, you know, kind of case?
I would say that like for every, you know, intellectual oriented, service oriented, for lawyers or doctors, we need artificial intelligence to help us take good decisions. Because maybe there are some things that you are not aware of, or, you know, different elements you have to take into consideration before taking a decision. Whether AI should replace and take the decisions instead of a human, I don't think so. But it's really here to make our life easy into our daily business, or, you know, daily life. I'm not sure if we're there. AI can prescribe medicine, or, you know, I'm not sure about that. I would not trust it at this stage as a patient. Probably will come there in 10 years from now. For sure, doctors will be disrupted by the coming technology with AI. Same for lawyers. Maybe we will not even plead anymore. I don't know, because maybe we'll have a predictive justice that will, you know, rule the case for you. So will it be the case for doctors? You still need the human connection, and that's when I said we need this human connection. AI can maybe make a proposal to a doctor to say, maybe you should prescribe this, or this is the diagnosis I suggest, but let human decide at the end of the circle.
I agree. Thank you.
Yeah. To add on that, I think we are in an era in healthcare and in other domains as well of augmentation. So the AI can help, doctors in this case focus on the most pressing things. I'm thinking like there's this, algorithm that was created for COVID screening, taking X-ray chest X-rays, and that will pinpoint like this is, with this probably 95% or whatever, potentially COVID, and in helping in the screening processes, especially at the beginning of the outbreak when the ER was collapsed, and that was augmenting actually ER doctors and nurses and helping, point at the patients that should be taken care first. I think that will go on for a long time until the models get really, really accurate, right? Because if you're 95% right, then you're 5% wrong. And what happens in this wrongs, right? So, and then also we as a society are not ready to be told by a machine what to do. Because raise your hand if you are. I'm not, right?
I agree.
And so,
I agree with you.
So there's gonna be also a societal change, and we need years with creatures of habit, right? So we need to see like for 10, 15 years of this thing, okay, it's not so bad, then I'll start trusting that. So it's accuracy, and while it's becoming better, augmenting our capabilities. And then we're gonna say like, okay, you can do that, right? And maybe one of the first things is, okay, you can drive for me. I personally hate driving. So if there's an autonomous car that can drive really well, take me and I'll read a book, so there's
the same. Thank you very much for your answers.
Thanks, Vilma. All right, great. So we've got a question from the Q&A, or I think it was from the chat. So the question is for you, Leila. Can you please share your story about the idea of how Amplify was born?
Well, do you have like an hour? So as I said, I started my career as a lawyer, and I was really passionate about pleading, defending cases. And how did I switch from law to automated marketing in some way? The thing is that to me, I'm more an advocate than a lawyer. So that is what is crucial to me is really to help people get heard and have their voice heard. So the whole Amplify project started with one vision, is to say, if I'm not a powerful one, if I don't have like money to be, famous, world famous, if the media don't take care, they don't care about me, how do I do to get heard? And that's where I met with my partners with this vision, and they said, okay, today if you want to go from A to B, you just need to pay Google and Facebook and they bring you to the right place. And it all started like this. So it's really to empower the little ones to benefit from the power of distribution, because that's where really the power lies, and help them to benefit in a simple way from this very efficient power of distribution. And that's how Amplify was born. But we have iterated. It didn't come straight like this. We have even created, crowdfunding function to help people fund their campaigns, but it was too early, I think. So we keep it somewhere on the platform so that we don't mix the messages. But it was really like, if I'm in the middle of nowhere and I need to be heard, how can I do? So I go on and Amplify. I just leave my message. Maybe my family and friends can come and help me to have this message go out worldwide. So that was the vision, and the mission is really to empower the voiceless.
Great, thank you, thank you. So we've got a question. So I'm going to have to flip to the Q&A now, because we are running a bit low on time. We've got about 5 to 10 minutes left before we have to close today's webinar. So just going through the Q&A questions. Carolina, this one's for you. What's the percentage of employees at Nestlé who are going to be affected by automation? So that's the first half. The second half is there already a roadmap for reskilling, and in what time frame?
Okay. The number, I'd say that probably around 60-70% of the employees, if not more, and I'm included, by the way. And so we have it in, because automation, people think usually bad things about automation. It depends on the impact it has financially on the person, obviously. But automation also leaves wiggle room for other things, right? So for example, the highest probability and the highest numbers is about 60% of our employees in the distribution piece. I think like people that load pallets or drivers, those have a high probability of automation because those are tasks that are repeatable. Like we already have some, autonomous vehicles loading and unloading trucks in our base, marketing and sales as well, because we're automating a lot of things. You know, our marketing spend has been moving consistently throughout the years on our automation. And so there's a lot of automation. That doesn't mean job loss necessarily. It means that they will turn into doing other types of things, right? And then the third one is around obviously the production, so the factories, and those are, you know, a probability of automation between 50 to 60, 70%. And then it drops significantly under 10% for other things that are like R&D or like IT. But all of us, I mean IT, all of us are gonna be affected. And then the second part of the question was timeframe for reskilling. That we are working on that because those are numbers that are estimates. As we are deploying AI, that's when we get the actual data of because, you know, there is a promise here, and then you push it in production, and there's a gap, right? And so it's super early stage for us. So we know what kinds of jobs. Just the time frame, we don't have it right? When, you know, we're gonna know in the next, I guess, couple of years, right? But we're very transparent. The first thing we did was publish our ethical principles, and the numbers that I just gave you are in the report for our employees to see. In terms of jobs, with with a chart with all the different job descriptions and to start the discussion, right? And have our own employees. We have a large base, and they're going to be part of the solution. We are going to be part of the solution.
Okay. Thanks, Carolina. So I think I'm going to have to take this opportunity to wrap up, which involves a couple of announcements and also requesting one more poll for the attendees to do. So my apologies, we haven't been able to get through all the questions, but I have captured them all. So we will hopefully be able to address them bit by bit as the time goes on. This is why we capture questions. So thank you so much, everybody. And big thank you to Carolina and Leila for your thoughtful presentations. Thanks for the audience for listening and participating. I really learned a lot today, so I'm really, really glad I got to listen to both of you. So we're going to be planning more online meetups in the future. And for the audience, we would really love your opinion on two things. The first thing is the format of the online future meetups. So what kind of format would you like to see? And the second question is whether you would be comfortable with attending physical chapter event meetups, which would be potentially looking at happening in fall this year. So you're going to see the polls come up for these two questions respectively. So please take a moment to provide us with this really important information so that we can keep making these webinars better. And I'll just give everybody a couple of moments to do that. Okay. And this one's just about physical chapter events. All right, cool. All right, cool. So just before we wrap up tonight, I just have two announcements that I'd like to make on behalf of Women in Digital Switzerland. First of all, WDS for short is associated to Impactio Foundation. They're working together on a white paper based on growing the presence of women in artificial intelligence. So this project is based on 3 parts: sharing experiences, challenges and desires through a list of AI women interviewed, a social study of the current situation of AI women in the market, and finally, the latest AI best practices. So the project is in line with our desire to enable women to have fulfilling careers in the digital field, and it should be released at the end of this year. So we'll definitely keep you updated, but please don't hesitate to get in touch with us if you have any recommendations that you would like to share. So we're available on Facebook, LinkedIn, and of course, our website as well. And secondly, the point I'd like to mention is all chapter managers, we're going to be sending all of our attendees a short 5-minute survey. So we'll send that progressively over the next couple of days or so. And what we're looking for in this survey is essentially your views, your expectations of how you would like these webinars to be constructed or to be structured. And so this is so that we can really meet your expectations and so that we can improve these webinars and make them more and more interesting for people to attend. So please do, when you get a chance, to fill it out once you receive it in your email. And so what I will do now is just end the webinar. So I just want to say thank you once again to everybody from Women in Digital Switzerland. A heartfelt thank you to all of our attendees. And a special thank you once again to our lovely speakers, Carolina and Leila, for sharing your valuable insights into becoming AI ready. And also just a special thanks to Simone, who is our VP Annual Conference and Events Organizer, and Rafaela Correa, who's our VP Chapter Development and Support. And just so you know, Rafaela is the person who's running all the technical procedures in Zoom. So she's what's made Raise Your Hand possible and everything else that we do in Zoom. So a big thank you to you. Thank you so much, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you all again at our future meetup. Stay tuned for the details. Take care, stay healthy, and we hope to see you soon after COVID-19. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.